The ghosts are perhaps the most important, yet least relevant species in the entirety of Xenoblade Chronicles X. Or at least they were in the original release. Most of the information we know about them is not found inside the game, but within external resources. Which is quite interesting, considering that the game features one of the biggest open worlds of its time, and numerous side quest chains for multiple different species of aliens that all came with various lore, always ending up giving you a massive amount of information, answers, and ultimately more questions. Despite that, I believe that Mr. Takahashi has given us a bunch of hints over the years, scattered across the most recent releases of the series, especially Xenoblade 3 and the Future Connected chapter. And if you know how the writing of the series works, basically reusing everything and twisting or mirroring it until something new is happening, you can fill the gaps. I address the elephant in the room up front. When I talk about these things, I don't see them as confirmation or proof that Xenoblade X can be seen as quote-unquote canon or not. Overall, the whole debate whether if X can be considered canon is, in my opinion, silly. Even more silly than the situation we had at the beginning of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, where some people just denied its connections to Xenoblade 1. It feels as if this is the only franchise in the world where the fanbase actively does not want things to be connected. Or at least it feels as if there is a large amount of it. If you ask me, the new release of Xenoblade X will most likely not have any links to the overall plot of the numbered series, leaving that perfectly intact, but elements from those games, such as a certain conduit, might reappear or have had an impact on Xenoblade X. I personally am more interested into the entirety of the Xenoblade world, including all the universes and their inner workings. I actually think that maybe the universes themselves are life forms, given that we both have affection and an entire hyperspace system named after the nervous system, as well as a virtual reality system that lets you dive into a person's mind. At least, if we take the whole Xeno franchise. In short, Shulk and Rex will not appear in this game. Maybe Noah and Mio. But that's a whole different planet. The Ghosts are the second faction that participates in the battle above the Earth. They travel within a gigantic, marble-shaped spaceship and are made of multiple other, smaller ships divided into the different types ranging from small to gigantic, with the mothership being a unique god-tier ship. Each of them contains a core which is filled with an unknown substance. Quite literally, it is actually mentioned but censored within the Secret Files book. All we know is that when one of these cores breaks, it causes an explosion that is massive. Basically, every single time a ghost explodes, you can see one of these gigantic waves in the intro, on par with the firepower of, let's say, what happened in the Battle of Tornar between Malas and Mithra. That makes ghosts especially powerful, and while you could say that Luxor was the main reason why the battle was dragged towards the Earth, since he wanted the human race to be erased, the ghosts themselves seem to seek for the humans as well, as they follow and attack the White Whale years after it's set apart. They are eventually defeated by the lone hero, but manage to force the white whale to crash land on Mira. And with that, I have basically summarized everything we learn about the ghost in-game. They never appear in any other cutscenes afterwards, and in fact their name isn't even dropped once. So it is actually very likely that the ghosts are simply going to get a new name. A detail that is often overlooked is that the planet Mira seems to have appeared out of nowhere, right before the white whale crash lands. I have this information from the wiki, and I assume it is also from the secret files, but given that Mira is an inhabitable planet and they've been searching through space for years now and didn't decide to land on it regardless makes sense. I don't know if it's canon for now. I'll assume this is just another Darth Sidious vs Mace Windu situation, where the book actually explains that he's moving lightning fast and that's why the Jedi Masters can't react, despite being very powerful in the Clone Wars series, while Windu is always using a bit of the force of his enemies and Firstly, it is very clear that the Ghost mothership looks almost exactly like Origin. And it's not surprising that the Mobius form of the consoles shares a slight resemblance to the smaller ghosts as well. Not only that, but we actually have a scrapped character named the Black Knight, who is modeled after the Testaments from Xenosaga, who were modeled after Graf from Xenogears, and who served as the base for the console design. Remember when I said these games like to reuse the same shit over and over again? Though I gotta say that the Black Knight, or at least the one most of us assume to be the Black Knight, does appear in the post-credits scene from Xenoblade X. That was where the original game ends, but now we know that the person is familiar with Lao, which means it is most likely a human, which opens up some possibilities, and also hints that he is at least part of the same group that works with Eleonora. At least I think that is the most obvious thing to point at. I'm not going to talk about her, Yelf, and the other implications there are, but that is actually a good transition to the popularity of a theory. That being that the entire planet Mira, or even the entirety of Xenoblade X, is just a simulation containing false implanted memories from the destruction of Earth. The only things that are missing are Avi and Kislev, Agnes and Kevis. It's definitely a plot twist that would fit to Xenoblade Chronicles X, who has already some of the best mind-blowing twists I ever seen in the gaming media as a whole. But for now, let's just take into consideration that Mira could be a simulation. I try my best to keep this organized. Remember, Xenoblade X is a massive game, so forgive me when this seems a bit messy. But before I delve further into my theories, there is another thing that you must know about when we talk about Xenoblade X and the Ghost, and that is dark matter. In Chapter 6 we have an entire inner monologue of Elmer, where she's describing the presence of the pilot still lingering near or inside the Vita, a powerful mech that can actually be seen fighting for Samaar, with the power to cause explosions on par with the ghost ship destruction. And Elmer is also commenting on the dark matter inside the Vita, saying that it must be their handiwork. Who she is referring here to is unknown, but for now I assume that she talks about the Ghost faction and not about Samaar, because Ganglion originally belonged to Samaar, and Ganglion tries to get the Vita no matter what. The in-game encyclopedia goes even further, stating that his technology cannot be deciphered, whether by humans or the Ganglion, and that it is absorbing dark matter. Actually, it's made of dark matter. Dark matter is then used to form weaponry and ammunition. The Vita is only ever used by Luxor endgame, but in the intro it was most likely used by the Great One, an interesting character that is theorized to be the Black Knight, but again, there is nothing that we can really say about that. An interesting detail to note is that the Vita is guarded by creatures known as the Tainted. Creatures that are possessed by something that lets them attack everything biological inside. And it's important to note that they are not a species on their own, no. They are made of several creatures living on Mira, including the Sphinx, Caro, and Skintimur. Oh my god. The in-game encyclopedia talks about the virus that induces madness. It has infected said creatures, but is unable to survive outside of Noctilum. Therefore, rest of Mira remains safely unaffected. Though it could also be that it can only exist nearby the Vita, which is proven wrong by the fact that the Tainted can still be found after the story ends, which can be blamed on gameplay elements, but if you ever saw my video about Common Blades, you know I take gameplay only stuff a bit too serious in Xenoblade. Nevertheless, we know something similar to this virus, being present in Future Connected. As the Fog King appears on the shoulder of Bionis, dark particles merge with the nearby creatures and drive them crazy. The fog also appears again in Xenoblade 3, where it is both dangerous and also being used by the Mobius. The latter being revealed when we enter Origin, or at least I assume this because all the enemies inside Origin are metals and machines attached to fog. I go so far to say that the dark matter is to blame for this, and that it is the same, or at least the same concept, the equivalent to Xenoblade 3's fog. And the funny thing is, the reason why I think this is actually explained within the game's common battle theme. Black Tar is a song that not only refers to the dark matter in its name, it also tells a story about people who are preparing to fight against something that possesses their allies. And in the second half of the song, which takes place if you start a battle in a skull, you can notice that it seems to be written from the perspective of an already possessed being, starting with very basic sentences and commenting on a world that sucks, as in he finds or found himself in a place that he doesn't like after being killed.
Taking over the cave, unexpected, hard to accept it. Getting marked with death, seeking friends, snatched and dark, possessed with the tar inside. Still in the body and breath, so only a shell is left. Witness the hell in the flesh, I fight to the death. Screaming, where's the relief? Maybe no more sleep. All swallowed in grief, images start to stalk my release. I hear voices, but no one talking to me. Losing your way, you need some protection. Right, I'll get you wherever you go. They will find you. Wherever you try to feel it, you just can't be there. Get down, don't back, shoot down with your guns. Just get up, don't give up, shoot down all the power. You show me in the fog. How many times I kill you, friend? How do you feel that shit? Just like endless.
Oh, by the way, there kinda is more to it. I wrote an analysis before that goes into much more detail about the entire lyrics that I'll link in the description, but for now that is the basic thing that you need to know. Since Xenoblade X was never finished back in the day, there were lots of things left unused or unexplained, so it's not a surprise that they would use these things in different games, especially when they are so much that they suffice as the game's lone antagonist. If you're still not convinced that Origin and the Ghost have things in common, then let me tell you that there are some enemies in Xenoblade X used by the Ganglion who are biomechanical and made of a living metal. These include the Xedum, the Falswo, and the Ochlakai. I used the German name. I have no idea how the latter are called in English. There is no wiki page about them, or they changed the name overseas for some reason. Translations are sometimes really stupid. These three are machines that have been on Mira for a long time, and the material cannot be replicated. Come to think of it, this might be the reason why the soul of the pilot seems to still linger within the Vita. We could use the information to suggest that the skull is basically an artificial version of a Mobius or an Ouroboros form. Or more specific, another form of intellecting, basically merging pilot and machine during combat, which would explain why Luxa can only use a third of the Vita's real power. He has some of the Great One's genes, being his descendant, but he is not the Great One itself. If the material of these machines works similar to Origin's metal, then it should be capable to store life and is maybe used to fuel machines with extra power. And given that Fiora can cut for life itself, and looking back at how massive the explosions on Earth are, that is not too much of a stretch. It is unknown if the Ghost have a different form other than the spaceship form, but it is suggested that Alma's true form is the humanoid equivalent. Given that there is a resemblance between the Mobius and the Ghost ships, it could be very possible that they have a human form as well, that might resemble the Black Knight, and they simply transform into a ghost rather than piloting one. But since we know that the Black Knight, if he is the Black Knight, knows Lao, and that he is also having a core similar to the Ghost, we should use him and therefore other humans as the template for said form. There is one Mobius, however, that immediately reminded me of Alma's true form when I saw him in full the first time. And that is Zed. Now, I understand if this sounds strange. After all, Zed is confirmed to be a concept rather than a real person. He is the Mobius in charge who takes shape of everything and everyone, controlling the inner workings of Origin. Which makes it easy to assume that Mobius in itself don't really exist at all. But he could still belong to a species that is formed that way, a species made of the ghost and thoughts of people. And if you ever played Xenoblade Chronicles X, you know how overboard Monolith Soft can become with their alien races. Makes me wonder why they never decided to include aliens in Xenosaga. But then again, they are most likely unimportant for the plot. Actually, it might be even important that there are no aliens in that plot at all. Now, a little excursus to Xenoblade 3. The Mobius themselves are a very interesting topic, and I think if we understand them, we maybe understand the Ghost better, but I just want to shortly explain how I interpret their appearance, because this is a video about the Ghost. Origin was a system made to store everyone's souls, and when the universes were about to merge, it activated. However, everyone was still alive, minding their own business. In Xenoblade 3's intro, the people are even celebrating Melia's birthday, when suddenly the time stops. This suggests that the public was not warned about the upcoming tragedy. Imagine you see an entire universe coming at you, what kind of fear that would trigger inside you. And so the united humanity inside Origin wished for nothing more than that everything would stay how it is supposed to be, which is the birth of Ionoris, and in return the Mobius. The Mobius are likely being born the moment their human's equivalent died. This was again very formatted, but I don't want to make a video about the Mobius at the moment. My point is just that Mobius are born from the dead, or at least from the souls of those who have a will strong enough to cheat death. And some people like Chris, Shania and Joran, who died when they decided they want to die, also turned into Mobius, likely accepting their life as a human coming to an end and moving on to a higher plane of existence. But they all died when Origin was already activated, so that can't be blamed on the inner workings of Ionius or Origin as well. I also want to note that Origin didn't look violet before its activation. This was something that happened after Ionius started to exist, which could hint that something else made a difference here. But whether or not Zed and the Mobius in general are a real species, he is similar in a different way to Elma besides his looks, in a specific way. They both do the same thing for a different reason and in a different situation. Both Origin and the Lifehold were built to store the souls of humans and most likely the world it saved. In Origin's case, it was to save them from the upcoming tragedy and to preserve the world. The Lifehold, however, while being built for basically the same reasons, was meant to create the world entirely new, using all the elements that were saved beforehand. Elma wanted to bring all of this to a different location, to basically reconstruct the Earth, much like how Klaus did in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Both Zed and Elma basically tried to maintain a certain state and failing to do so in their own ways. Both Origin and the Lifehold are also humanity's highest technological achievements in their respective worlds. I know that all sounds a bit of a stretch, but I still wanted to point it out. While in both of the cases, humans more or less willingly decided for this, the ghosts themselves could mirror the intentions of both Elma and Zed. Meaning that, while obviously Zed is an antagonist, both Elma and Zed just wanted what they thought to be the best for humanity. Ghost probably has no such interest. I predict that the main leader of the Ganglion is a person that, similar to Egil, follows the goal of gathering life forms to use their energy for fueling his machines. That is because if we take Origin as an example, the souls needed for a project like this to work must come from somewhere. Dark matter could be used to drug the victims or to devour their souls, leaving behind an empty shell that relies on instinct and is turned into an obedient slave that must fulfill a mission such as protecting the Vita. You could almost say the dark matter turns anything it emerges with into a doll. And while this video is not about Samaar, I will mention that Samaar has created Ganglion and that there are some hints that they also created other species, such as the Zarubagans as well. The evidence being that the Zarubagans' god, Galboga, looks like humans. The Samaarians are the predecessors of humans in Xenoblade X, and the humans that traveled with the White Whale are a failsafe, created by Samaar to destroy the Ganglion should they ever rebel against them. Interestingly, Ganglion seems to refer to lots of different species rather than being an own species, having a double meaning of some sorts, since it's also the name of the group Luxor is leading. So it could actually mean everything created by Samaar just dies when it touches human DNA. Why am I telling you this? Well, it basically means that the Samaarians have managed to play God, creating new life forms and perhaps even new planets. Basically, I'm saying that in a very different way, they are the equivalent to Zanza, building an army of biological weapons, where the ghosts are the equivalent to Mayneth building an army of mechanical beings. So, it could be that, again, if the main leader of the Ganglion is someone like Egil, there might be a reason for them doing this. This is just my guess at what kind of stuff from the previous games is admittedly heavily altered and reused. This time, the mirroring being that the ghosts are the actual bad guys, and I highlight my thought on Egil because then Elma would basically fulfill a similar role as Veneer, helping the enemy, the humans, to escape. And given that human DNA is very effective against Ganglion, it would make sense for the ghost to capture them, to use their DNA as a powerful weapon against them. Another mirroring, because in Xenoblade 1 the mechons used HOMS, or rather HOMS DNA, to protect themselves from the Monado, while in this case the human DNA would be a weapon, to be effective against the Ganglion. Again though, take all of this with a grain of salt. We know a bit more about Samaar than we know about the ghost, but we also know very little. This is something that a DLC like Tornor, or what I would be much more hyped for personally, a sequel or even a prequel to X would most likely discuss. Don't get me wrong, I love both Future Redeemed and Tornor. These are easily the best DLCs out there that I have ever played. I mean, you get an entirely new game for so little money. But I'm just tired of having a release and then just waiting for the DLC to answer unanswered questions. But that's just me. I personally don't want that this is going to be the template for the series going on. Going back to the theory that everything in X, or at least Mira, is a simulation, we must note that Ionios 2 was just that, a virtual reality within Origin. So it's likely that while using it as a weapon on one hand, the Ghost also used souls or their technology to create a virtual world. Another plane, a resting space for all the lost souls they've gathered. A place they can't escape. And by that I mean you literally can't leave Mira. Even if you try to travel through time, you will end up in Mira again. Then again, also in Chapter 6, the Ganglion talk about a phenomenon space, so who knows if it's that or the other thing. Xenoblade X is like a riddle, buried in questions, and it almost seems as if the answers are right around the corner. I personally am wondering since a long time how the plot of Xenoblade X was supposed to end or to continue, because the story always left a bitter taste in my mouth. And let's just say I am very excited for the upcoming re-release of the game, and knowing that it's not just a remake or a remaster, but actually ends what they have begun 10 years ago, it's just amazing. And I can't imagine I am the only one who was wondering some of the things, even if they've never delved so much into extra content for the game. So now let me know what you think is going to happen with the Ghost. Do you think they just take what has already been created but never put in a game? Or do you think they will readjust things to make it more appealing to what they have created in the previous games? Or have they done all decisions, all the hints that I just mentioned in favor of this scrapped work? While we're at it, I thank you for watching this video. And there's another thing you can write into the comments if you want to. What are your wishes for the Xenoblade X Remastered? Are you for or against a connection between Xenoblade X and the numbered series? Personally, as I said, I think it's silly. We have the Sooo I, which is literally capable of traveling through different universes. But hey, it's not really important at the end of the day whether or not these games are directly connected or just theoretical. In the end, I just want to have fun doing some theory crafting and playing amazing games. I wish you a good evening, and remember, it's only a few months until we can get our answers.